Hey friends, Jeff here with a new episode of Conversations Life Science Leaders Aren't Having. Today we welcome to the show Rich Daly. Rich is president of CARsgen Therapeutics, where they are focused on innovative CAR-T therapies for the treatment of hematological malignancies and solid tumors with the vision of making cancer curable. As I've gotten to know Rich, the word that comes to mind when I think about him is warrior. Now, I use that word in a very particular way because a warrior is different than a soldier. A warrior is one who is committed to fight for the people that are entrusted into his care. And that is who Rich is to me. He fights for the people that are in his care, whether it be in his family, whether it be in his organization, or his community in the world. And as we dive into this conversation today, you're going to hear the elements of his being a warrior in the world in many, many different ways. So sit back and enjoy this conversation with Rich Daly. Rich Daly, welcome. It's so exciting to have you and for us to dive into some really interesting topics that I know I've been curious about ever since we met. So welcome. Glad to have you.
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah. And I just did a short intro of you, of who you are to me, but I would love to start with sharing with our audience what you're up to in the world.
Well, thanks. So I've spent the balance of my career doing startups, scale-ups, and transformations. And right now I'm working at CARsgen, and we're doing a startup and really kind of a transformation, going from an R&D to an R&D and C, or R&D and commercial company. And we're in the CAR-T space, and it's just incredibly exciting. So, learning and doing every day and, just being in that space. And my wife and I are in the process of moving from Chicago down to Research Triangle Park. So, very hectic and, working with our two sons who both are adults living in Brooklyn and, expanding on their careers and working with them. And, just one of them's a data scientist and one's an artist, a painter. And so living that life, so just really enjoying the expanse of all of those things all at one time. Sometimes a little overwhelming, but just, incredibly, incredibly enjoyable.
That's awesome. Thanks for that. And I'd like to even paint a even richer picture of you. And we do that on the show with the 3 H's. Okay. The 3 H's are a hero or heroes, could be more than one, a hero, a highlight, and a hardship.
Okay.
Not necessarily in that order, but those are our 3 H's. What are your 3 H's?
That's a great question. So a hero for me, so many heroes, but the one person I think that truly rescued me was a coach that I had in college. So I had a scholarship to go to college, an athletic scholarship, and I turned it down, actually, to pay my own way in college, because this coach convinced me that the sport I was involved in was a sport I would never make a living in, and that the most important thing was education. And I remember him during the recruiting visit saying to me, actually cursing at me, saying, "I don't give a damn if you ever are compete for me, but you will graduate, you will get a degree, and you will make something of your life in the world." And I thought in that moment, that scholarship is out from that other university. This is where I need to go to school. And I went home and told my father I was turning down the scholarship. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody so angry as that. But that person, that coach, that hero changed my life. And he was a gentleman named Mike DeChico, and unbelievable influence in my life. Really just a phenomenal person for me. So really a true hero. A hardship, I would say, was growing up in a family with addiction, significant addiction issues. But it gave me a true appreciation for the truth. Because when you grow up in a family with addiction issues, the truth is a squishy thing. It's a slippery thing. You don't find it very often. So I have a true appreciation. And those people that work for me, they know that, and work with me, know that I really appreciate just getting to the heart of it, and I always say, one of the things I always say is the truth is a patient thing. It waits and it eventually comes out. And so let's just get to it really quickly. So that hardship, actually, I would say probably is something that's made me a lot stronger. So hero, hardship, and highlight. So about 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was a benign brain tumor, thankfully. And I don't think a lot of people would look at that and say that that's a highlight. But for me, I get the benefit today of living the life of a patient every day. And I'd been involved in the pharmaceutical industry for about 12 years before that. And I thought I had an appreciation for what it was to be a patient. But today, and since then, to go through surgery and then to be on medication every day and depend on medication every day, I truly have a great appreciation for that. So for me, that's a real highlight, to live that every day and to know what that means every single day. And to be that patient advocate inside of an organization, inside of a company that is working to deliver, valuable medicines and therapies to patients. So that's a great highlight.
Yeah. I'm just reflecting on all three of those. There's the word, you mentioned the word truth around your hardship, but it feels like truth really is a golden thread through all three of those. A coach or a hero that really spoke truth.
Yes.
A truth that you were able to start to appreciate what it really was through your growing up years and your family of origin, and then truth of what life is really like. And I can imagine gratitude. It feels like that's a thread that runs through all three of those things.
Oh, absolutely. To come out of a family with addiction issues, and I actually serve on the board of Opiant. We're the company that actually innovated naloxone. And the reason why is because I have a passion for this, and I have a deep understanding of what it means to live in a family with addiction issues and the challenges and the deep sorrow that comes with that. So, and to be able to help people along that journey is just so meaningful. And truth and gratitude really it's a great word. To be able to be thankful for things that you could potentially help with, and thankful for things that might turn out better today as opposed to yesterday. Yeah, absolutely true.
Yeah. Truth, gratitude, and I sense a solid line of empathy in there too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, those are great. And I can imagine that those are values that have just shaped your life. It shapes who you are today as president of the organization, where you find that these are just in your bone type of values. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I would. I'll give you a great example. About 15 years ago, I had a brand manager that worked in our organization where I was at a very senior executive level. And we created a sales aid that had a problem in it. Some data was wrong. And we were reviewing the sales aid, and I said, well, that data is wrong. You're going to have to destroy that and start all over again. And this brand manager said, that's going to cost us about $400,000 or $500,000. I said, that's too bad, but consider it a lesson, because we don't go to market with data that's incorrect, because sometimes physicians are relying on us and we have to bring the truth. He said, well, I really don't want to do that. My response was, I really don't care. We can't afford to bring something forward that's not truthful. So this is really, I think, important. Physicians sometimes rely on the data we bring forward. So yeah, it is a guiding principle. Absolutely.
It reminds me of a line a mentor of mine has said to me many, many times. And he says, values aren't your values until they hurt.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so easy to put truth up on the wall or on your website if that would happen to be one of yours or a company's express values. But it wasn't really a value until it hurt, until it cost $500,000.
That's right. And it sends a signal. It's like everybody talks about people are our most important asset. Well, they really are. And then you've got to fight. So if you find out that, we're not treating our people well, and then, and of course, you don't advertise what you do to the general population of your company, but, you go in and you fight for your people. You fight to do the right thing, whether it's comp and ben, or it's just, just the general overall atmosphere of the company. And, sometimes the price of leadership is delivering bad news. So sometimes you have to take an individual actor inside of a company who's not behaving well, and you have to take them out of the company. And unfortunately, in my career, I've had to do that. And it's amazing to me when we've done that, we've taken that individual actor who's not not behaving well, the people that come to you and say, thank you, because, you're taking somebody who's a pivotal player in the company and moving them out, and it hurts, but it's a short-term pain, but it's the right thing to do. And so I think that's another example of that kind of leadership. You're delivering bad news to the organization. This is going to hurt us, but it's the right thing to do. And then you see the people rally around that decision because they know you're doing the right thing for them and for the company. I agree.
Yeah, that's the phrase, the price of leadership is delivering bad news.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah, and that I want to cast the name of the podcast and get your thoughts. So the name of the podcast is Conversations Life Science Leaders Aren't Having. When you hear that name, when you hear that title, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
So I've had the benefit of being a CEO of a publicly traded company, and everybody wants to be the CEO of a publicly traded company until they become one. Then they realize this is not a job anybody should ever want. And I actually enjoyed it. I really did like it. But I think one of the things that is interesting is, what does the job look like when you finally get there? And if you could convey that to people, right? So what kind of conversation could you have with the folks around you who have aspirations to move in the world? How could you convey to them, again, you're not making a judgment for them, but how could you have those conversations about, this is what your life is like in this role? So I remember working for somebody, and this person was incredibly dedicated to their role. They were the president of a US organization. And we had a bit of a crisis. And I remember we addressed the crisis, and the next day we were with the sales training class. I was in the sales training class, and they said, I was asking people, what do you want to do? And somebody said, I want to be the president of this company. And I said, well, do you know what the president of the company was doing last night? And they said, no. And this is just perfect timing. I said, last night, I was with the president of the company here until 10:30 last night. And they said, oh, I imagine it's probably pretty tough. I said, yeah, last night was his 27th anniversary, and he was here with me. That's what life can be like. Is that the kind of life you want to live? And I think sometimes people sign up for these roles and they don't understand, what is it like in that role? And I think the conversations we can have that I don't think we have often enough are, what is it like in that role? And so when people come to me and say, with career development discussions, I'll say, find 5 people who have the job you want to have and ask them, what are the experiences you had? What are the jobs you had? What is the experience it gave you that got you to where you are? And what is your life like now? So that you, as an aspiring leader, can make a decision. Do I want to live that life? Because sometimes you encounter people in leadership positions who just aren't that happy. Like, I've chosen to live in this startup, scale up, and transformational world. And to me, it's heaven. I love it. But I've seen people come into this world and brought people into this world, and they are miserable. So I often get accused of trying to talk people out of coming to organizations like this, because I say, look, we don't have the systems, we don't have the job descriptions, we don't have this, and you actually don't want to work here. So make it, let's stop this conversation right now and part friends. And people say, are you trying to talk me out of working there? No, I just want you to know that this is tough, so that 6 months from now, when you come and say, this is tough, I can say, yeah, we had that conversation 6 months ago. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Because I think we want people to make better decisions, because when you sign up for a new job, you're signing up to change your life. And I want you to make the best decision for you and your family. So I think we could have better conversations with people as they aspire to higher or broader roles and responsibilities. I think that'd be good and healthy for all of us.
There's an expression that I try to live by, I share with clients, that don't compare your outside to someone else's inside.
Interesting.
Don't compare your outside to someone else's inside, meaning you don't know what their experience is inside,
Right.
what's happening. And to do it, it just sends you down, often, not always, but it sends you down a path that is really not what you thought it would be. And I think you're pointing to some really sage advice wherever people are in their careers, of be careful what you wish for.
Absolutely. Or at least understand what you were wishing for, right?
Yeah.
And then find your center. So where is your center? Where's that rock that you go to all the time? And, it could be different things for different people. For me, the one place I go to consistently for advice is Susan, my wife. I consistently go back because we have a partnership. We trust each other, and everybody has to find that center for themselves, and this is the most important place I go for advice. And one of the things in very senior leadership positions that people, I think, generally don't understand is no one feeds you. There's nowhere to turn. Sometimes people talk about loneliness, and I think people understand that at a very high level, if you will. But really, no one feeds you and is giving you a lot of feedback, if you will, right? So where are you going for that advice? Who can you turn to? And it's very challenging. So, in your role as a coach, this is a really important thing for people to go to. They want someone that they can consistently turn to. And I think this is a really important role that you can play, that you do play for leaders. I think it's really important.
So your wife, Susan, is a way that you get fed. How else have you found, or where else do you get fed?
Well, so for me, there are four. I always think about it, and I talk to our boys about the four corners of your life, right? There's the spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and physical. And it's a big thing where people are always talking about, work-life balance. I prefer work-life integration, but 6 one, half dozen the other. But, are you pursuing something intellectually outside of work? We're challenged all the time about all the data we're fed, but are you feeding your mind and keeping a balance in your mind? There's a spiritual component to your life. Are you feeding that? There's a physical component to your life. I mean, we're in healthcare. And I would go to meetings and we would be feeding people garbage. I'm like, we're a healthcare company. Why are we feeding these people this garbage food? We should be feeding them healthy food, or at least giving them a choice. And and then the intellectual, physical. What are they doing? How can we encourage people to be healthier in their lifestyle? But people need to make a choice, and I think all of that feeds together. But the data are clear and compelling. If you have relationships in a community, you live a better life. You live a stronger, healthier life. So having relationships, not just at work, but also outside of work, I think that's really important. And where do you find it? Intellectually, spiritually, physically, emotionally. Find them somewhere. I think it's really, really critical to your long-term, short-term, and long-term happiness.
I was saying to a client the other day, overwhelmed is undernourished.
Well said.
And I asked him, where are you getting fed? And he's in a startup mode, and that world is intense, as you know.
Yeah.
And that was my challenge to him, is go and get fed in one of those domains. In one of those domains, go and get fed. How do you help your leaders that work for you, or your more broadly your team, your employee, how do you help them to see their way in that?
Well, I think an essential part of the role is to give feedback, and it's a very fine line to cross over, outside of work, right? So you want to give feedback and you want to help people grow, but feedback is not just, hey, nice job, good job on the presentation. Feedback is feedback. Like, here's where you need to grow. What are your aspirations to truly understand? And then go into those kinds of discussions we talked about earlier, which is, where do you see yourself going to? Okay, well, and then being honest and saying, and delivering, the feedback in such a way that it can be heard, but also saying, here's what you need to do if you want to aspire to that. Here are the experiences you need to have. Here are here's the expertise you need to develop. I recently had a conversation with someone that works here. They want to be a CEO, but they don't want to have any commercial experience. They don't want to be anywhere near the commercial realm. They have great science, great manufacturing. And I said, but this is a perfect opportunity for you. I don't want to do it. That's okay. Well, you run the risk, but there's a great opening for you. And, my job, I see a big part of my job is finding 3 people to fill my role so that my boss can look at it and say, I can pick any one of these 3 people, but also to arm the people who don't get that job so that they can go on to other companies if they so choose, and they're prepared for success in the long term. But I think it starts with feedback. It starts with understanding what they're trying to accomplish and then looking for those opportunities to help them. But also, if they're not taking care of themselves, helping them understand the risk that they're taking. I think that's critical too. But there is a fine line, crossing over. I mean, you're somebody's manager. You're not their caretaker. You have to be very careful.
Yeah. And I come back to something you said a few minutes ago of really fighting for your people.
Yes.
And so, well, whether it be their well-being, whether it be their career path, whether it be upgrading their skill, their competency, their leadership, what does fighting for your people look like? I mean, those are some domains and subject areas, but like, give us a picture of what it means to pick up the sword and the shield, so to speak, on behalf of your people and to fight for them.
So I'll give you a great example. So we're kind of in we're in the middle of a triple Venn diagram. We're in Research Triangle Park, we're in cell and gene therapy, and we're in oncology. It almost doesn't get more competitive than that. I'm sure people in Boston would say, hey, it's more competitive here. Yeah, I'm sure it's very competitive. There are 50 cell and gene therapy companies here. The number of people who have manufacturing expertise, not just experience, but expertise, is few and far between. So making sure that your comp and ben is competitive, that's a war. And now, okay, we're experiencing 8+% inflation. Unemployment is 3.5, 3.6%. That's the general population. In biotech, it's 0.3%. Now you're sitting here saying, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I've got to make sure that I am competitive, right? And if you're a world away in my management, you're saying, well, we look pretty good. No. You have to understand the war that we're in, the fight that we're in for people. And it's not just about comp and ben. It's making sure that I have, and I'm not kidding, this is not that important, but it's just a nice touch. I have enough coffee. I have enough snacks because people are getting drawn away by, enough PTO. I mean, we have a really rich 401k. I mean, 6% match from day one, and you're vested from day one. I mean, but we got to make sure that we stay competitive. Are we going to make sure that everybody gets what's happening here locally? If somebody starts giving half-day Fridays, they just raise the stakes. What am I going to do? And we're a manufacturing organization. Not everybody can work from home, and everybody wants to work from home. But if you're manufacturing, you got to be in the factory. So, it's just very touch and go. You've got to be looking at all the different things you can do for your folks who have to be here, The folks who don't have to be here, can you give them the flexibility? And my philosophy is, I don't care where you are as long as the work gets done. And, we want to have the ultimate flexibility for our team.
And, you hear at a certain point, the right coffee or the right snacks. I mean, those are nice things. But at a certain point, you hear again and again, the classic statistic is people don't leave companies, they leave managers.
Sure.
And how have you developed your style, your approach to not only leading, but leading leaders, developing leaders, so that's a really hard decision. Yeah, company, on the other side of the triangle can offer you better coffee, better perks, better PTO, but there's a real cost, so to speak, to leave. How have you developed that in terms of your approach to make leaving, wherever it might be, CARsgen or wherever you've been throughout your career, to make that a really hard decision for somebody?
So great question. So I think a couple of factors, multifactorial. First, you have to be competitive on the basics, right? So your comp and ben, you have to be competitive. The second thing is, I think that transparency goes a long way, right? People knowing the people that work here, or at least being exposed and being willing to take any question. So one of the things I consistently say is there are three, in a universal sense, there are three answers to any question. If I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't know the answer, I'll find out. And if I can't tell you, and that's a legitimate answer, because sometimes you can't. I'll tell you, I can't tell you. And we talk about that all the time. So for instance, we're a publicly traded company. If somebody says, what's the status with business development? I can't talk about that. We're a publicly traded company. And people start to get the tone and the tenor of what you're talking about. But then they're free to ask any question, and they know that it'll fall into one of the three buckets. And when people ask a question, I say, I don't know the answer to that, but I turn it around. I get that answer, or somebody on the team gets the answer. So we as a leadership team, we turn it around. So we create this transparency, we create this trust. That takes time. So I've been here for 9 months, 10 months. And, it takes more than a year in my experience. I worked for a really great boss at one point in time. Came into a company, 25% turnover, sales were stalling, going down. And we went and we met with every single employee, 3,000 employees. We met with them over dinner in the course of about 6 months. We took turnover down to industry average. We didn't raise salaries. Sales didn't really turn around. They kind of stabilized. But what we did was we created trust. And then when I went to another company that was in the leadership position, again, sales were horrible, company not making its plan, 3,000 employees. Every Friday, I was out meeting with employees everywhere in the country. And I would meet with 20 or 30 of them at a time. I would be like, what's going on? And then Monday morning, I would take the list back. Here are the things we need to fix. And so we turned that business around from the largest portfolio in the US and poorest performing to the fastest growing portfolio in the US in 9 months. And, we were able to do it because we built trust. And, I think that's a big part of it, is that transparency part. And people saying, yeah, this person and this team is really on our side. They want to see us do well.
Yeah. And Rich, I just can't get this picture of fighting for people. And I just get that about you. I shared with you before when we turned on record, on your LinkedIn profile, you have words, really powerful words like civil rights, social action, human rights, that this idea of fighting for people who maybe some can't fight for themselves is again, it's in your bones.
Right.
That's just who you are, standing up and fighting for people who maybe can't fight for themselves. What's at the heart of that?
So my dad was an educator, a lifelong educator, and I truly believe in the power of education and the empowerment and agency of people, right? And so giving people I should be thoughtful in my words, providing people with the access to education and helping them to be able to become truly self-realizing agents in the world. And I think then they can make great decisions on their own behalf. And, I think great things happen when people are truly informed. And they have access to information, access to capital, access to, others who can help them and give them information or, just more avenues of success. So I taught high school. I worked in not-for-profit, actually before I came to the industry. So for me, this is something that, as you said, is in my bones. And I think people are always surprised when, we get into these discussions about the power of the individual within the company. And I start talking about, no, this is the right thing to do. We're going to do this. And I think some of the HR colleagues that I have are like, what? I'm a microbiologist who went over to the business side, and they're just like, this doesn't make any sense, But to me, this is all about the power of the individual. And like you said, it earlier in the conversation, it isn't a value until it hurts. And, for me, it's all about the people. Technology is great, but you got to make it come to life. Our motto here, our vision is making cancer curable. We can have the best technology, but if we are letting people move in and out of our company and they don't buy into our vision, we'll never achieve our vision. We'll never see that happen. And with CAR-T, it's actually possible. We've seen it. It's actually possible. And, we were able to bring, more than just hope to people suffering with cancer.
And this is a question I often ask CEOs and presidents and your peers is you're fighting for different groups of people all at the same time. You're fighting for the patient,
right?
You're fighting for your team. You're fighting for your investors,
right?
And your shareholders. And I'm sure there's other groups. Those are kind of the three main groups. Is how have you found your way in that fight to, each of those have some common aspirations, but they're also very unique. How have you found your way in your leadership of fighting for all three, sometimes very different groups?
Right. So again, if you can think of a couple of different visuals. You can think of one of the things I say all the time is, we walk a razor's edge every day. So if we do too much for the patient, what happens? We go out of business. If we do too much for the shareholder, what happens? We go out of business. If we do too much for the employee, we go out of business because we can't. It's not possible. We have to balance all of these things at the same time. And to me, this is the puzzle that we're charged to solve. How do we do what we can given the constraints? And there are constraints. And I think outside of our industry, and I think this is true of every industry, outside of business, most people don't understand that we do in fact have constraints, and we are balancing all of these constituencies at all times. We could certainly, give away everything we do. The manufacturing costs of CAR-T, because it's personalized medicine, we make a living drug. That kind of blow. When I talk to my family, they're not in biotech or pharma at all. They're like, I don't even understand what that means. But we make a living drug. And the manufacturing costs of CAR-T are so incredible. We could give it away, but there would be nothing behind it. We would be gone, right? We could do what's best for the shareholders, then we'd be pilloried on the markets. People would hate us. So we have to walk these lines all the time. And it is very much, what is the vision? So making cancer curable. And then how do we put that into practice every single day? It's not just today, but it is, here's the vision, here's what we're shooting for. Then how do we put that into practice? And so that's our touchstone. We're going to make cancer curable. And that's a patient-focused, patient-driven. And that's one of the reasons why we like to have patients in our business, And we're all patients, every one of us. And so we try and remind our folks all the time, how would you want to be treated if you were at the doctor, or if your loved one was at the doctor? What would you want that physician to make the decision on? You'd want them to make the decision on great science, great data, not some slipshod kind of thing. So that's how we're going to go forward. That's how we make our decisions.
Mm. And employees come with all sorts of different motivations. And what are some of the keys in terms of communicating vision and aligning around vision that have been successful for you when you're dealing with tens, hundreds, thousands of individuals who are all unique and they all have different motivations, different things behind their why of why they're doing what they're doing? How do you create that alignment with such a diverse group of people?
Again, great question. If I had that answer, I mean, I think, the answer, there are, approaches we have. I think it's important to recognize the individual who comes to work every day, right? And they come with challenges. There's a great book by David White called The Heart Aroused. And David White's a poet. And I remember when I was recovering from my surgery a long time ago, I read this book and I was like, this is just a really interesting book about the individual who comes to work, and they come with, David White says, all the dross, all the things that they bring. And you just have to recognize that these folks are carrying, as you said, the inside versus the outside, they're carrying all these things you can't see. And, give them a little space, give them a little peace, and, give them a break. Lay out your expectations, lay out the vision, and then give them the support they need. I am no fan of the Jack Welch, let's cut off the bottom X% every year. I mean, we have an obligation to help our folks. As I said, you join a company, you've made a decision to change your life. Well, that's not just on the individual. That's on us too. We have almost a contract with that individual to say, hey, how can we help you? Now, at some point, some folks don't opt in. We have to make our way and say, this is where we're going. We want you to come along. Please come along. Some people don't opt in. That's okay. But, those who opt in, we want to help. And so, we point at the vision. This is where we're going. This is how we intend to get there. And here are the steps along the way. And we want to communicate that. And I think that's where most companies drop the ball, is in communicating along the way. We're so busy every day that we don't communicate enough. And that's on us. We have to communicate more effectively, not necessarily more, but more effectively.
With that in mind, if you could plant a seed in each one of your leaders who are leaders of others, plant a conversation, a seed for a conversation that each one of them would have this week or next, what would be that one conversation that you would want them to have with their people?
I would want them to remind them about the excitement we had the day we hired them, and the belief that we had the day we hired them. Go back to that moment where we made the offer and say, we believe in you. And that's why we made the offer. And we want you to believe in the company. You accepted the offer because you believe in the company. And re-engage at that level always, and always look for that. Because I think we get into the mess of the day that is, and we forget sometimes. But we were so excited, that newness, the freshness of it, and let's remind ourselves why we were excited to make that offer and why we were excited to accept that offer. I come to work every day and I'm just thrilled. I mean, I'm so excited because of the mission and the vision of the company. And I want to be really clear. It's not easy. I mean, we have a lot of work to do. I mean, we have a lot of things that I would like to change. And, that's my job, is to change them just like everybody else's. But I'm reminded every day, why did I take this job? Why did they offer me this job? We go through it, and, sometimes it's like, I had a friend one time who said, it's like trying to run through Jello. Sometimes it is, but I'm excited, it gets me jazzed. So I would just want to remind them of that, plant that seed.
I absolutely love that. It was, my wife and I are about to celebrate our 17th wedding anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And, you hear similar things as you just wished for this conversation of go back to why you got married.
Right.
Go back, and you can't go back completely, but even to capture a little bit of that essence of the joy and the excitement, just the unabated just enthusiasm for why we entered into this partnership. I love going to the heart of that for your employees as well. Because if you think about it, it is a little bit like a marriage. When you hire someone that, do you take CARsgen to be your lawfully wedded whatever? But yeah, I love the energy the potential energy that can create in an organization and in the heart and mind of an individual. Really beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm gonna ask you to have another conversation, but this time this will be our last question. Go back to 25 years ago, and where you could pull your younger self aside and have a chat with him.
Okay.
And have a conversation with that guy, that younger guy.
Okay.
What would that conversation entail?
So probably a couple of elements. Number one, so I always sought a lot of feedback from the people I worked with, not just my managers, but a lot of people I worked with. And so you could always tell what I was thinking by what was on my face. So they were like, dude, we can read it on your face. So number one, I would try and be much more, I guess, stoic in my outlook and my appearance. That would be the advice I would give myself. Like, don't react, be calmer. The second is, I've learned over the years, I get so excited about something, an idea, that I would want to jump into the conversation. Others were trying to finish their thoughts, and I'd be like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And so I've learned actually to take notes and just slow myself down, because it still captures my idea. I get my excitement onto paper, and then I'm still listening and I'm still engaged, but others are allowed to finish. I notice that we generally have an interruption culture. I'm not just saying in our company, I'm just saying in general, people want to get their ideas across. And a lot of the coaching I do with people with whom I work over the years has been, let them finish. And whatever you need to do to enable that other person to finish is let them finish their idea. It helps them feel respected, but it also helps you to understand the scale and scope of their idea. So, and I made that mistake so many times early on. And I'm much more patient today and to just listen. And so I think I would give myself that advice 10 or 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. Just stop, listen, finish, let them finish. And most of the time, I actually find in meetings right now, I don't have a question because they actually cover it. They actually have a thoughtful answer or a thoughtful argument. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. So I think it's, it serves them well and it serves me well.
Yeah, I love that. Great advice. Great advice. Well, we're at the end of our time together, Rich. Thank you so much for sharing your heart. There's lots of different ways and different topics that we could have gone, and maybe for a future part 2 of our conversation. In the meantime, though, if people want to know more about you and more about CARsgen, where can they find you?
We're at www.carsgen.com and CARsgen.com. And happy to take any questions, or you can just reach out to me at richard.daly@carsgen.com.
Great. Well, we'll put that all in the show notes and encourage folks to reach out if they want to. Thanks again, Rich. This was so much fun.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
You're welcome.